Well, here's something you don't see every day. Matter of fact, I don't know if I've had the backhoe in my shop on this channel in the last several years. I can't remember anything. I haven't given much attention to the backhoe lately. I feel kind of bad, but it's time to give it some love. I've got a job coming up that I need it for this coming weekend. I'm going to be splitting some wood, hopefully, at the Hoosier Firewood Hysteria. So in this video, I thought we'd take a little bit of a deep dive into the backhoe here. You know, show you when I got it, talk about why I have it. I had a backhoe before this. Maybe I'll even talk about buying some equipment when you're young and how this all came to be, because this thing has served me well. So did the one before it. But for now, I'm going to dig into an oil change, some cleaning, some greasing, and hopefully it'll be all ready to serve me again this upcoming weekend. Dig Drive DIY! So growing up in the 80s, I thought backhoes were the most universal piece of excavating equipment that ever existed. You know, we didn't have mini excavators real prevalent back then, and skid steers weren't nearly as common as they are now. So a backhoe, in my mind, with a front loader bucket and a rear backhoe is like the perfect tool that somebody could have. Matter of fact, I even daydreamed about putting a front end loader and a backhoe on the John Deere 140 garden tractor that my dad had. That to me would have been the ultimate piece of equipment to have around a homestead. And it probably would have too, but back in the mid 80s, that wasn't commonplace. You never saw that like you do now. So by the time I was out of high school and in the early 2000s, before Kara and I were even married, this was like 2001, 2002, I wanted a backhoe. Like, I was bound and determined to get a backhoe. I thought it would be just the best thing to have, and I could get the most amount of work done. I wouldn't even need a trailer because I could drive it around to places in the neighborhood to get work done. So I worked out a deal with my former boss, the guy I worked for doing excavating work, and if I could come up with enough money for half down, and I think he wanted $14,000 for my first backhoe. So I decided I was going to come up with the money to purchase this backhoe no matter what. I sold a few things that I had available to sell, and I raised up as much of the money as I could. And then I even borrowed some money from Kara before we were married. She chipped in, and I think my dad chipped in too, knowing that hopefully we would use that backhoe for some projects around his place. Came up with half the money, gave him that, and then I worked the second half off. I continued to do excavating work while I was in college, and I paid for it as I went, and was able to get this 1976 John Deere straight 410A backhoe. And that backhoe at the time was already 25, 26 years old. Felt old to me at that time, but it worked, and I did tons of projects with that thing. We did do some remodeling work at my dad's. I remember where we ripped the old front porch off the house and took all that material out of there with that backhoe, hauled it back to the woods, and he built a new porch after that. I had a buddy that spread lime and needed something to load the lime truck, and I worked for him too, so I would haul the backhoe around and load the lime spreader with it. I hauled it around on a gooseneck trailer behind my truck I had at the time. I had a Power Stroke, and that backhoe it served me well. I kept it for a little over 10 years, and finally in 2011 decided I wanted to upgrade. I scrounged up a little more money, and again sold a ton of stuff that I had around that I had been collecting. So any garden tractors I wasn't using, I was selling. I had an old snowmobile machine I was trying to sell. I had an old dump bed. I had an F700 truck that I was going to build up. I just sold and liquidated everything I had in order to try to come up with enough money to purchase a newer backhoe. I really wanted something, another 20 years newer than what I had. And I think that's what a lot of folks don't realize when they want to purchase something like that, that it takes a little bit of pain. You got to make some sacrifices. If you want to do something and you don't have the money for it, then you either got to wait and save, or you've got to sacrifice and sell some things and just make it happen. And that's fortunately what I was able to do when I was that age, was just make it happen. Do whatever it took to get what you wanted. And the only person responsible for paying for it and making it work out was me. So that's what I did. I sold a bunch of stuff, sold the backhoe. Matter of fact, the first video I ever put up on YouTube was a video of my 1976 John Deere backhoe. I was plowing snow with it, and then I thought it'd be awesome if I posted a video of it for sale, then I could share that with potential buyers if they wanted to see it in action. So that's what I did. So I was able to finally sell the 76, and I shopped around for a long time, looked at some D's, looked at a couple E's, and I really wanted the 310 SC because it had the bigger front tires and it was just a beefier machine. I finally found one up in Michigan, went up and looked at it and decided I was going to get it, agreed on a price, and then Dad and I went back a few days later with his semi and I hauled it home on a lowboy that I borrowed. And that was in 2011, right before the girls were born. I thought, if I'm going to get a newer backhoe, I better do it right now. Make this investment now, because when the girls come, I'm not going to be spending any more crazy money like that, and I want to just focus my efforts on them. But so now here we are, another 14 years later, and my 1998 310 SC is as old as what my first backhoe was when I bought it. It's over 25 years old. It's 27 years old now. It's crazy to think that that machine is that old. I'm going to finish this up and start getting that backhoe around, ready to go for the Hoosier Firewood Hysteria. I want to change the oil, clean up a few things, make sure I get it greased, and then I got to switch to the wood splitter. Nice. Put the stream plug back in. It's got an O-ring on it. It's a really nice plug, seals up well. Cool. Okay. Oh, that's not there. So I like to go ahead and mark on the bottom of my oil filter the date and the hours. Put that on top, give that a little oil for it to lubricate the seal there. It's really coming down out there. But the oil fill is on this side, right here behind this door. Clean funnel. I think this holds about 13 quarts. Yeah, I don't think it holds that much oil. So that's 8 quarts and it's already full. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up and we'll check it. I might have to top it off a little bit, but we are pretty close. 9,142 hours. We got low hydraulic oil too. Okay, let's check it again. Yeah, we're down to just below the add mark. So maybe another quart or two. So I bought this clean funnel from John Deere, but I did see them just like this available on Amazon, pretty cheap. And I think it's a great investment because the caps just keep the funnel clean from debris when it's not in use. And you can hurry up and put the caps back on it and it's ready to go for the next time. I'll put a link in the description down below. It's nothing to me, I just thought they were handy. All right. Well, that wraps up our oil change. I'm going to go ahead and move on to do some greasing. So for those of you that know all about greasing a piece of heavy machinery, this is probably going to be boring, but if you have no idea how it's done, it might be really interesting. Well, it's a new day. The sun is finally shining. We had about 2 inches of rain last night. I thought I'd do a little follow-up because there's been a lot of people ask me if all the dirt that I hauled in the front yard from the pond, because I hauled like, I don't know, 10 or 12 loads of dirt out here to try to elevate this and raise it up. And there's been people asking, wondering if that has done any good. And we really haven't had a nice significant rain since then to test it out. Well, last night was a significant enough rain to tell that it did make a difference. So all this water that you see right here in the field, this would have been in our yard as well. So I raised this up nearly a foot. So that keeps the water in the field and it's keeping it out of here, because normally this is all water clear up to these trees where those cats are. I raised all that around the trees. So it's doing good things. Kara and I were really tickled this morning to see the water and the field trash and debris out there. I call that field trash, but that's just, you know, the stuff on top that floats. So that's good news. It's going up the ditch in the front like it should be. I can walk around out here. Normally this is all underwater. So what a difference a dozen loads of dirt can make, huh? So nice. Yeah, we got some water standing out here in the ditch, but right here where I'm walking, this would have been all underwater completely. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But I'm gonna get back to the backhoe. We gotta do a little greasing, some final prep work, maybe clean the cab a little bit, and then we gotta get things loaded up and ready to go. I'm really looking forward to this. Hopefully it doesn't get rained out. They're calling for rain on Saturday. Today's Thursday. We'll see, I guess. We can only hope and try and wish. You never plan on the weather, because as soon as you do, it'll let you down. So when I worked for an excavating company full-time, part of our daily routine was fueling and greasing. Every morning you would start the day by greasing the machines and fueling everything up. And if you had ran for 10 hours or 12 hours the day before, it was time for greasing, and they were definitely needing fuel. Now I'm lucky that, you know, I could go months sometimes without putting 10 or 12 hours on my machine. So I don't grease it on a routine, frequent basis, but I know that in a situation like this, I'm gonna want it greased. It's been a while, so it's time. Every joint that moves on a machine needs to be greased. So obviously where these loader arms and cylinders are attached to the frame of the tractor, and where the bucket's attached to the frame of the loader arms, that all obviously moves and needs greased. But there's a lot of places you wouldn't assume, and it's amazing how many grease points are on a piece of heavy equipment. Back in the day, we did it with pistol grip manual grease guns. So that way you'd have one hand that could pump the grease gun and one hand to hold the end of the hose, and you'd go around to every zerk. Some people say zert, and I don't understand that, but you'd go around to every zerk and you'd have to pump, you know, 5 to 8 pumps of grease sometimes in there, maybe 4 to 8, who knows, depending on what the joint is. But fortunately nowadays, and these came up even when I was still excavating, we had cordless grease guns, but I've got this manual, or this Milwaukee powered grease gun that takes a 18-volt battery. I'm gonna use that and get to work. I'll show you the grease zerks you might not expect on this thing. There's also some grease zerks that are connected to lines that go down underneath. So these two here lubricate the front axle and its hinge point underneath. And a lot of the new machines have grease points like that. Even some of the machines we had, they'll have a bank of grease zerks and then lines that go to all the different places that need to be greased. There's also grease zerks on these axle shafts up here up front. Sometimes you gotta move the machine to get to them. See that right there? Well, it feels like there's a lot of grease zerks on the front of the machine, on the front loader bucket, but that is nothing compared to what's on the back. When you get to the back, you got to probably start with another grease tube if you've done a good job on the front. There's a lot of moving parts back here. For example, there are 2 cylinders down below tucked up underneath the machine, and they both pivot within the frame. These swing cylinders are connected to the main boom right here, and there's a grease zerk at each one of these points. The main pivot pin of the boom is down here, so you got to grease this joint, and then there's an upper joint that you got to grease, and then you've got joints that move up and down. You've got cylinder end rod attachments. Here's a grease zerk. These stabilizer arms have grease zerks at the base. Each cylinder, grease, of course, where it's connected, and then remember, this is an extend-a-hose, so this whole thing slides up and down on a big tubular framework. And there's grease zerks in here that lubricate that. So you've got grease zerks through this hole, grease zerk right there. There's grease zerks obviously on the bucket where it spins and turns and rotates the back cylinder. And to grease this, you've got to grease it kind of in this position, folded up, and then you got to outstretch the arm and extend the extend-a-hoe so that you can get these grease zerks on the top. Because some of those, you need a ladder to get that one up there. Maybe I can do it from the loft. And right on cue as I get good and started on the backhoe part of it, I ran out of grease. So for those that don't know, I'll show real quick. I always take for granted the wide range of viewers that are watching this channel. There's younger people that haven't done this stuff and aren't as familiar with it. It's old hat for some of us that do it all the time, but if you've never used a grease gun, then you wouldn't know. But this cylinder comes out of the bottom, and that's where your tube of grease goes. It's a cartridge style grease gun, meaning there's a replacement cartridge that goes in once you've expended, or once you've used up that one. So you pull this little thing down on the bottom, the old spent cartridge pops itself out. Pull that out like so. I like just having regular paper towels around for greasing because you're going to ruin a rag if you use it to clean up grease, and the blue ones are a little bit more expensive, so the cheap white paper towels are just your best. But the cartridge has a plastic cap on one end, comes off, and you got to pull this cylinder, you got to pull the plunger. There's a rubber plunger on the inside like a syringe. You pull that down and you can lock that into place. Then it's got a metal pull tab on the other. Put that in there like that. And you're going to want to try to seat that all the way down in there. And then take your metal pull tab. Some of you older guys remember these pull tabs on other things. I can barely remember that. When there was pull tabs on beverage cans, I do remember that. Stepped on a pop top. That's what old Jimmy's talking about. And then you're going to screw that back in there. I'm going to take my paper towel and get a little bit of that grease off of there, because that's just going to wind up on the grease gun somewhere. And that just screws in there like that. You're going to screw it in part way. I still got the plunger out. Once I get it started, then I release this, and that's going to push the air out of it. Just like when you're trying to get the air out of a syringe. You know, you turn it upside down and see the air bubbles come up to the top. Well, you kind of have to do the same thing for a grease gun. The old hand pump grease guns were worse, but these automatic ones are much, much easier. They kind of self-prime, so to speak, or get the air out. Pull the trigger. There, it's already primed and ready. So I still had the grease tube loose so that the air has a place to escape. And so now I'm going to finish tightening it up. Okay. We're ready to get back at it. I think I've got everything I can get while I'm in the shop here. I'm gonna have to pull it outside, extend the rear backhoe out to get everything finished up with the grease gun. But I want to work on cleaning the cab a little bit while I got it in here. I'll do that, then we'll get it outside and we'll be getting much, much closer to being ready to go. Well, thankfully the interior isn't too bad, but it's been a while since I did any cleaning in here. And you know, anytime you clean it up, wash the windows down, it just gives you a better feeling to operate it. So, oh boy. You know, every cab accumulates some things over time. And there's some things that I like to keep in there. When we get all done, I'll show you what I do like to keep in the backhoe versus what I don't. Well, it feels really good to be getting this cleaned up, but you know what? I feel really guilty for having neglected the backhoe for so long. It's been sitting outside because I don't have room to put it in. I've been putting the skid loader in, and you know, there was a time when this was my pride and joy. I'm still really proud to have it, but you know, when something starts to fall off and you don't show it as much interest anymore, then that either means it's time to part ways or you need to renew that interest. I think having pride in what you own goes a long ways. You know, my boss when I was excavating, Paul, he's a mentor to me too, and taught me a lot. We had an older F-250 pickup truck. It was like an 85 or 86. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was nice. It had decent rims on it. And every once in a while it would get dirty or neglected and not looking very good. And he would say, I remember him saying one time, you know, it isn't much, but it's all we got. And there's so much truth to that. If you just take pride in what you have, it doesn't have to be the newest or the latest and the greatest and the fanciest or the prettiest. But if you keep it clean, you keep it maintained and take care of it, then that pride and ownership will be reflected in a lot of the things you do. And I can feel it in myself, having neglected this backhoe for a while, that I need to either take a renewed interest in it or update it or something. You know, I'm not married to it. I had my first backhoe for 10 years. I've had this one for 14 now. I like having a backhoe around, so I'm either going to have to spruce this one up to revitalize my interest and my want to take care of it, or I'm going to have to upgrade and replace it. But there's nothing wrong with it. I can keep it around. It's got some leaks and things I need to maintain, but I guess my main point is there's a lot of value in taking pride in what you have, regardless of its age, condition, or appeal to others. You should just take care of it for yourself, and it'll affect a lot of the different things in your life if you treat them all that way. All right. I'm going to call that good enough. It looks a lot different. So, got that all wrapped up. Now I need to assess what I took out, decide what I want to put back in there. Here's a little coffee can that I always keep wrenches in. I keep a couple things that it takes to change out the buckets. All right, here's what we got. I didn't go crazy on the floor because it's supposed to be rainy and wet, so that's probably going to get trashed right away, but got things cleaned up pretty nice. Dash is looking good. I always keep a knife in here and a pencil or a marker or a pen. Got a pair of gloves I always have right here. Need a koozie to keep my cold beverages cold on a hot day. I got a 200-foot tape right there. Can of marking paint I always keep here. Tape measure that I always have there for measuring pipe. I replaced my coffee can full of tools with a rat poison bucket full of tools and miscellaneous fasteners. I got a towel in there. I always like having a towel. Of course, I always have a shovel and a probe in here. And I've used this bungee cord since I got the backhoe to keep them secure. I've got a punch bar here. Keep a pry bar right here on this side. Got flags over here. Really nice to have in a backhoe, some flags. And that is it. When you address the dirt and grime, it just makes you feel better about using this thing. And now I'm not ashamed to have somebody crawl up in here. And I feel like I haven't been neglecting the backhoe for quite as long and as badly as I have. But anyway, I'm ready to move things outside and get the wood splitter mounted up on this. And then aside from putting fuel in it, I think it's ready to go. Being clean in here makes it feel like a new machine. It's amazing the difference. So I'm glad I took the time to do it. You know, the worst part about putting on the wood splitter is that it's clunky and clumsy to switch it over because I don't have a quick attach for the wood splitter. I have to manually, you know, just put the pins in. You got to get the alignment just right. I've got the splitter sitting on a cart that I built, and I have to have the backhoe the right distance away from the cart in order to get the pins aligned correctly is what I'm trying to say. So it's a little tricky. Plus the floor in here in the barn isn't very level. Just a lot going on. So I got the splitter on earlier this morning. Then we're on spring break this week, so I've only been working on this when I have time. We've been trying to get it in lots of other activities while the girls are home this week and I took off work. Now it's late in the evening. I'm getting ready to leave in the morning and it's chilled off, it's rained. Now we're talking. Super easy. These ramps are super easy. We'll see if they're slippery. Well, I tinkered around last week getting the ramp set up on the truck so it was easier to load the 755 into the bed. And I spent most of the week this week tinkering around with the backhoe, getting it cleaned up, oil changed, greased, and ready. Now I feel like we're all set to go. If this rain will quit, then we'll be in good shape. You know, if you're watching this on Sunday, then the Hoosier Firewood Hysteria took place yesterday on April 5th. And if it went off pretty good and I was there, then you're watching clips of it right now. Hopefully it was a really good time and we cut and split a ton of firewood so the veterans had stuff to sell and make money for their causes. So if you'd like to see what all this was for and you want to know what happened at the firewood gathering, then come back next Sunday and hopefully I'll have a video of everything that went down there and hopefully we put the backhoe to good use. Regardless whether you're here this time or you're here next week, I just want to thank you so much for clicking on this video. It means a lot to me, even when I'm doing minuscule projects like this that aren't big and grandiose. And you know, I've always just recorded what I'm up to, and I appreciate so much that you come along for the ride. So thanks for that. Hope you liked it, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you next week. I'm ready to cut some wood. The darn mud